Memphis track boy, let's go, let's go, let's go.
My Colorado swing, my Colorado swing, my Colorado swing.
Welcome into a new BuffStampede Radio. Adam Munsterteiger, the publisher of BuffStampede.com. Joined again by football analyst William Gardner. A new scholarship edition to talk about. Some more prep recruiting stuff's happening. And we're going to go through the defensive depth chart predictions. And like we do always this time of year, share some of our thoughts from behind the scenes footage that comes out of CU's strength and conditioning program. William, I hope your weekend is going okay.
It's not so bad. How are you doing?
Doing pretty well. You know, I think I'm getting slowly but surely ready to cover another football season. You know, I really, I'm a lot of just kind of tired at the end of the season after being on the road a lot. And I know that there's a lot of people with a lot harder jobs than I have. I'm definitely not trying to sound like a martyr here, but it takes some time to kind of rejuvenate in the off season to fully get that passion back to where you really need it to, because it's a grind once you get into the season. And so I'm starting to get there in Big 12 Media Days is I think less than a month away. So yeah, no, I'm getting excited to get back to covering football.
Yeah, I think half your year is 24/7. Not that, no pun intended, but that you really got to go hard once they start camp until they finish their bowl game.
Yeah, no question. But you know, it beats working for a living. I will say that. So definitely not trying to complain. It's one of those things that I felt like, especially this past year, because we hadn't really, I was joking with Brian that we hadn't developed our December calluses on this job yet, because it was pretty rare that the Buffaloes went to a bowl game, and then we had New York and the Heisman Trophy campaign on top of all that stuff. So it was all fun stuff. I'm glad we got to do it. But this offseason definitely feels shorter as a result.
But it's gotta have a lot more upside than trying to, find a molecule of positivism in what we had every year before that.
Yeah, I mean, if you need to see the other side of it, watch the video that Brian Howell and I did together after we had just covered the press conference following Carl Jarrell's dismissal in 2022. And at that point, they weren't able to get transfers, and it looked really bleak for Colorado football. If you want to see the other side of it, that's a good video to watch.
I wasn't 100% sure at that point anybody would take the damn job.
Yeah. Much less Deion Sanders, right? I mean, so that was just a gift of all gifts, and it's not easy because you had to completely revamp this roster, and now you've got to replace a couple elite players. But we'll get into that with our depth chart predictions. Let's talk about Simeon Price, who comes on board as a running back, spent 3 years at Mississippi State. One of those years was a redshirt year, and then 1 season at Coastal Carolina. Not a ton of carries over the course of his college career, though. He's had a healthy 5-yard average, with all those touches he's had offensively. Bigger recruit. What were your thoughts on him coming into the mix?
Well, I think it's in the modern age of transfers and, not really essentially unlimited scholarships, because who's going to go over 105 anyway, but there's no harm in bringing in somebody like this, but I think there's some excitement to it. I think we've said for years that you never give up on a guy until his eligibility's done. You just never know. If a guy, I think that in order for them to bring in anybody at this point, they have to believe that he's a guy who is working as hard as everybody else. And if you're working that hard, good things can happen. So I think at 6 foot 215, he's a big guy that can run between the tackles. And, he's played football at this level before. And I don't think, he comes in to automatically be the number one guy on the roster, but I think he'll be a lot better addition than most people think he is.
Yeah, like kind of to your point in terms of the scholarship numbers, up until Price committing, you only had 4 scholarship running backs on the roster. And something that Mike McIntyre has always stuck with me, that you've got to have a deep running back room, because those guys are magnets. Like every time the ball is in their hands, you've got 11 guys coming at you. And so and we saw it last year, right? I think every scholarship back on Colorado's roster had some type of physical ailment during the season. And that's what gives you a little bit of hope about Dallin Hayden, because we knew he had the high ankle sprain last year. How much more explosive can he look this year? But adding a fifth guy, I think at that position was needed. You've got a couple walk-ons there that you feel like you can plug in. And we've talked about Cam Michael having that ability to move there. So I feel better about that position. You're still searching for, like, is there a feature back on this roster, I guess is the question at this point.
Well, I think the coaching staff thinks it's going to be Dallin Hayden, and we'll see if that happens or not. I think that Simeon Price is a guy that brings a lot. He's a different running back than everybody else on the roster, so I can give you some different things that he can do. But I assume that this has got to be something that Marshall Falk passed on, or said okay to, and likes something about this guy. And I don't know. I mean, I've seen some people say, well, he's the last one left, and he just got a body in the room. I think it's more than that. I don't think I think it's been very clear in the last couple of years that Coach Prime doesn't bring anybody in just to be a body in the room. You got to meet the standard, and you've got to bring something to the table. So I think I don't know, man. I think it's exciting. He's a new guy on the roster, and he'll compete with the rest of those guys and make them all push harder. And it's good enough to be at Mississippi State for 3 years, and I think that's kind of a guy that can add something to our roster.
Yeah, I think
everybody doesn't have to be 1,000-yard rusher to be a valuable addition, for Christ's sakes,
Yeah. No, I don't think that's part of Coach Prime's MO with this staff, is taking guys that they don't think can compete. Price is a bigger back. He was a junior Olympian, a top 100 Florida recruit coming out of high school. And so, yeah, you can take chances on some guys like this when you're far below that old 85 number. And now, like you said, going up to 105, you're never going to need 105 scholarship players. So I kind of like the way they approach this right now. And we talked about it. There was a question on our mailbag show we do with Matt Smith about, well, there's so much experience on this team. What does that mean for the future? Well, it's just a different era now. Like, you needed 85 scholarship guys before, because you had, like we've talked about, a lot of, frankly, guys that were not going to get on the field for a couple of years. Yeah. Now the way Colorado's operating is like they want everybody in that locker room to have some type of role.
Well, and so I think you take, you're looking at guys, you let somebody else develop them, and you get a couple of years to take a look at what their work product is, and are they hardworking guys? Are they guys that add more to the team than they take away? And at least you have a couple of years in college to see where they're headed and what they're after and what their mentality is about. But yeah, the days of 15 or 20 of your guys being true freshmen that aren't playing, that's gone, man. So people are like, well, there's a lot of teams. It was a big damn deal 2 years ago when we had 50-something transfers. Now it's regular. Lots of teams are doing it now, and so I think a lot of seniors on this team. I think it's built to be ready to compete now. With the idea, I think Coach Prime's not an idiot. He realized how much we were going to lose this year, and so they went looking a different route, and that's to get a bunch of very experienced, older, physically developed guys who get out there and compete and play, and this is one of those guys. So I think it adds to the mix and gives some different options in the running back room and to the offensive coordinator what they can do with it.
Yeah. I will go back to a point that I've made a few times. My only complaint is just that you can't go into this spring window trying to fill too many holes, because the talent just isn't out there, like, to do that. And guys like Roy that people were questioning bringing on, like, they were top 10 ranked nationally guys in terms of portal uncommitted guys before they joined the herd, because it was, just very slim pickings out there. And right. Price is a guy that was in the portal for a long time, and he kind of waited for this opportunity. Walker Anderson was kind of the similar situation coming out of UCLA, that he didn't want to have to, go down to the group of 5 level, and took his time, and Colorado's given them an opportunity. We'll see how it pans out here in the coming months. One other thing about Price is that he is a Mike Leach disciple, like, in terms of he committed to Mike Leach. He developed under him early on. And he said he would have stayed at Mississippi State for the entire time of his college career. Had Coach Leach not unfortunately passed away unexpectedly. So, you know he's good in terms of being a receiver out of the backfield if he's been in Leach's system.
And picking up pass protections and things like that. So that's a positive for sure, but he's still a bigger back and you can run him inside and things of that nature. So I don't know. I think he adds a certain dimensions to the offense. You mentioned Walker Anderson and they bring him in from UCLA and he's still got 3 more years of eligibility. So there's sort of a guy that you saw his first year or two, and now he's still a developmental guy, but maybe give you something this year or next year. So there's just not a whole lot of value to having guys that aren't going to play right away because they're just going to leave. Yeah.
Anderson, actually 4 years of eligibility. So all he's done is redshirt so far. So definitely a younger guy in that group. Have you gotten a chance to see the new field turf? Do you have any thoughts there at Folsom Field?
Well, I haven't been on it and run on it and been up there in the stadium, but I think it looks great. I think it looks fantastic.
It's going to look really good on TV, isn't it? That was my main reaction.
Yeah, I think it looks really professional and really sharp and really it's not going to be like late October when it kind of starts to look like crap and there's dirt showing and chunks ripped out of it. I think I think the way they did it is gorgeous. I love the black end zones and it really just pops when you see it from up in the press box where the cameras will be and stuff like that. And I think it's just, it's like, it's just another little thing. It's like that by itself is not going to convince anybody to come play here. But when they go out on that balcony up in the Champions Club and they look down on that and your first thought is, holy crap, look at that. That is so cool. That can't help but set a positive tone, and watching it on, there are going to be kids watching that going, I don't want to play there. So I think it has a lot of positives. It looks great. I think the latest era of artificial turf is much safer. So I think it's overall a great look.
Started out my week watching some of the behind the scenes footage on Well-Off Media, Reach the People, and the pregame show. And the first thing I saw was Shiloh Sanders gifting the entire team Apple Watches. It's one of those guys that we had to defend so much during his time at Colorado, and it's like he really is a good dude that's looking out for his teammates. It was fun to kind of see the look on guys' faces as they received that gift. Did you see any of that video that was going around this week?
Yeah, a little bit. And then I don't know. I was thinking, well, where's ours, man? Come on, we're out here. So I'm in here, crawled through glass to get to this podcast here, put my life on the line to put the word out there. So come on, put the brother up. Yeah, I don't know. It's, the watching all the stuff that's going on. It's the time of year though that aside from things like that, it's sort of the same thing every week. They're working out hard, and it's impressive to see that hard work. I think it's fun to me to watch in the weight room and on the field and see some of the personalities and then to see a lot of the new guys and how they're fitting in and how hard they're working and how size and things like that, and how they're lifting and the weights they're lifting and stuff like that. So I think it's fun. The defensive linemen are freaking huge.
Oh my gosh.
Massive. Yeah. And just a whole different brand of defensive linemen than what we've had. And we'll talk about that here, but then every time I see Jordan Seaton, he just looks bigger and more in charge in there, and so there's a lot of positives going on, we got a good looking bunch of athletes and now they got to put them into a team and make them play that way.
How about Ryan Staub back-to-back standing backflips? Did you see that?
Yeah, I can do that. You can't do that?
I don't know. I guess as a fellow white guy, I just didn't expect Ryan Staub to do that, but I think it's pretty cool that he can.
Yeah, well, I can't. I don't know how anybody does those kinds of things. And then I was watching who's the really tall wide receiver?
Sincere Brown, man,
and he had them all. He had them almost up as tall as he was, and he jumped up on top of it. And I'm like, son of a bitch, man.
and that's legit because Joseph Williams, who we were so impressed this spring, and his film last year at Tulsa of just being able to catch those 50-50 balls kind of in a Will Shepherd mode. And Sincere Brown was jumping higher than him. So that was impressive to see.
Yeah, I mean, you bounced me off a big old trampoline with one of those spring belts on me. You couldn't get me up there. You need a crane to hoist my ass up on top of that thing. But,
He's pretty skinny, Sincere, but man, he is going to be a tall target for them this year.
Yeah, he can get up there, and we got some guys that can get up in the air and go after those 50-50 balls, and we'll see. I'm a little concerned about how thin he is, but we'll see what he can do. And that wide receiver room just continues to be stacked. I'm always. It is funny though, watching them in the weight room, not just the wide receivers, but the defensive linemen. All of them really is like some of them just won't shut up ever. Some dudes just got to be running their mouth all the time. It's kind of
I'm trying to think. Caleb Mathis is up there. He's definitely one of them that likes to talk a lot. I've really liked Draylon Miller's mannerisms. Just like he can have fun with the guys. He can be a fun-loving teammate, but you can tell that he's got big priorities and big goals for himself and the future, and I can't wait to see what that looks like for him the next couple of years.
Well, and that's what we got. We've got some guys on this roster that are just loaded with talent. And, you mentioned earlier talking about how do we go into this season replacing some superstars that got drafted and other guys like that. And that's how it works. I mean, you win, you lose guys, and you replace them. And hopefully you replace them with guys that are almost as good or just as good. People say, how do you continue without a Heisman Trophy winner? Well, I don't know. The top 10 teams do it every year. So you plug the next guy in and see what happens. And put a guy like Draylon Miller and Cam Michael and some of these other guys, Amari and Miller. That's not a big drop in talent, man. It may sound crazy to say that from a Travis Hunter or a Shedeur Sanders, but it really isn't.
Yeah. Just like your boy Dan Lanning that likes to throw up the O. Xavier Hill threw it, not in the same way. I think he did it like this. He said he's going to give up 0 sacks this year. Or at least that's the goal for him. He said he gave up 2 at Memphis last year.
Yeah. Well, that other guy you mentioned, I'm not sure how he can get anything done because he's so busy jumping into pools with teenage boys. But hey, he got to do his thing. You do your thing, Danny. But yeah, Xavier Hill is another one. He's a guy I've been looking at recently, and I'm like, the more I don't know, all these offensive linemen, the more I look at a lot of them, the more excited I am about them. I mean, it's funny how like Xavier Hill, he was one of the first ones to commit to us, and now it seems like he's been here a long darn time, and I kind of forgot about what he had done before, and then you start going back and looking, you're like, damn, son of a bitch, that guy can play. I mean, he was the best player on that Memphis team last year, just about. So he's a guy that could be very exciting. And now those coaches just got to find the right 5. Half of those guys, the size of guys like Ogunbiyi and Chrysler and Xavier Hill and Miguel and Larry Dunn. I mean, if you just put them foot to foot, there's no room to get between them. All I got to do is stand. You got to run almost to the sidelines to get around them because they're so wide. So
I'm enjoying watching Andrew Swayze. I thought that they had a good strength coach the last couple of years. Mo Sims seemed to do a good job with this team. I thought that more times than not, they were the better conditioned team, the stronger team later in games from a strength and conditioning standpoint. Yeah. But Swayze, and I didn't quite know what to make of him after his first meeting with the team because he came in guns a-blazing. And I was like, whoa, okay. and that was probably on purpose for that reason, right? To kind of shock the system of these guys. But he seems to be able to connect with these guys on a man-to-man basis that is pretty cool to watch.
Well, and he's far more laid back on the field than he was that first day in the meeting room. And I think that's a better coaching style. Frankly, most people respond more. Real leadership to me is when you connect with other human beings on a level where they have something that they want, you're helping them to achieve it, right? So you help them to overcome their perceived limits and do better and do more. And so I think Swayze obviously has a lot of knowledge about strength conditioning, but he also has a lot of leadership ability, and it's just natural when he just talks to these guys, and they relate to him, and he's not yelling and screaming and cussing and all that sort of stuff. He's just talking to him man to man and saying, "Look, you want all these things. Here's how you're going to get it." And so
Even with like the music part of it, you could be just kind of an asshole and go like, "You guys kind of went a little too out of bounds today. We're cutting that out." But he talked to them man to man and said, "Look, here's the deal. We need to keep the main thing, which is, of course, one of Coach Prime's main slogans." But it was, this generation of players, as we've heard other coaches talk about, they need sometimes things explained to them. They want to know the reason. They want to know the why.
But it's not that different, really, because I've been coaching. My first time coaching was late in the '80s, for God's sakes, and young men still responded better back then. I was in the military. I was in the Marine Corps and the Navy, and we responded better to leaders that told us why we were doing what we were doing, explained to us, gave us a reason to be bought in. It's like, here's why I want you to give so much, because this is going to be the outcome of it. And I don't make so much. People say, "Oh, everything's different now," but I think people are still basically the same as they've been for 10,000 years with their basic motivations, right? You want to be part of something, man. You want to belong to something. You want to believe in a guy on either side of you. You want to believe you want to believe that what you're giving your heart and soul to is worth the time and the effort. You want to believe that the guy you're giving everything for gives a damn about you. And so I think that it's not that much different today than it's ever been. It's different in terms of their social media and this and that. And sometimes you got to break through a lot of the buzz that's going on just to reach them. But it's the same thing that's ever been is when you reach somebody, you get more out of them. Because, that's the same old saying I remember way back is they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Show them you care and you'll get so much more out of people,
One guy that got an attaboy from Coach Swayze this week was Damon Greaves, the punter. These Australians like to run. Mark Bassett ran a 4.61 at Pro Timing Day, and Greaves out there trying to chase down teammates.
What you got? I don't know. You got to chase down kangaroos and Tasmanian devils and stuff out there. Don't you got to chase down your dinner before you can eat it in Australia? Fair.
Today's episode is brought to us by Macaulay Capital Fractional CFO Services. Is your business looking for financial guidance and support, but not yet big enough to hire a full-time CFO? Well, we have a solution for you. Hiring a fractional CFO who can work with your business on a part-time basis. You get the benefit of having a seasoned financial expert on your team without the commitment or expense of a full-time hire. And here's the best part. It's likely that a partnership with Macaulay Capital will be a win-win situation, meaning that your business will make more money from the guidance of a fractional CFO than the total cost of partnering with us. For more information or to set up a meeting, please visit MacaulayCapital.com. That's MCCAULEY Capital.com. William, everybody that listens to our podcast knows that we love the Hungry Toad. They've been bringing a taste of England to Boulder since 1991. At the Hungry Toad, they serve up hearty homemade fare from their scratch kitchen paired with a brilliant selection of British beers. They're the perfect spot for friends and family to gather, relax, and enjoy the warm, welcoming atmosphere. If you're mad for football, so are they. Whether it's the American gridiron or European footy, they proudly support CU football and CU women's soccer. The Hungry Toad, Boulder's local pub that's not on Pearl Street. Head to 2543 Broadway in Boulder.
And you know what? Hans Serrata don't take no whoopings either. He hands them out. How's that for a second?
I love it. Do you have any other observations from what you saw out of the Buffaloes this past week? I think you start to get into a little bit of repetitive mode because, a lot of the same stuff is going on, but anything else stand out to you?
Not really. I think they're just working. I think, everybody says, "Oh, same thing every summer." Well, I think they're working as hard as I've ever seen them. And I think that Swayze, in addition to being able to reach them and inspire them, is a stern taskmaster and is pushing them as hard as they've ever been pushed. So I think we're going to see the most out of the talent that they bring to the table, and they're going to be ready to go as a position coach, you rely on your strength and conditioning coach to get your guy ready to go, and then you have to teach him how to play the game and whatever. So I think we're going to see some big, strong dudes who can run on this team, and I think it's going to be exciting from what I've seen. I've seen there's some crazy power and strength in there, that's for sure.
All right. I made my defensive depth chart prediction. I threw the specialists on there at the end. And like we did last week with the offense, I am very anxious to get your thoughts. We had some good feedback on the Inside the Herd message board on BuffStampede.com. Let's start with defensive tackle. And I went Amari McNeil, number 1, Torian Carter, Torian Carter, the second, number 2 on the depth chart at defensive tackle, number 1 spot. Tavian Coleman, number 3. And at the other defensive tackle spot, I had Tawfiq Thomas, number 1, Gabriel Lightfoot, number 2, and Brandon Davis Swain, number 3. And then I guess we can lump in nose tackle here as well. I went Anquan Barnes, 1, Jaheim Otis, 2, and Christian Hudson, the freshman from Florida, number 3. Where did you like my picks here? Where did you maybe disagree?
Well, the one thing I would say is that I wouldn't put too much into the 3 position spots like defensive tackle versus nose tackle versus whatever, because I think Anquan Barnes and Jaheim Otis can play any one of the 3 spots. I think that Amari McNeil could play any one of the 3 spots under certain circumstances. I think Carter could play all 3 spots. Gabriel Lightfoot, to me, looks a little bit more like Block Bully in his shorter stature and what have you. So he could play inside too. So I wouldn't hang too much importance on the positions. I think that what we have here is a group of defensive linemen where the coaches can put them in groups where they work best together, so you can move guys around. Like it would not surprise me a bit to see Anquan Barnes, Jaheim Otis, and Amari McNeil all on the field at one time. I think that'd be an unblockable group. I don't know what the hell you do with that as an offensive line. But all those guys, I think there's 7 guys that I feel confident about right now, and then Christian Hudson and Brandon Davis Swain maybe still a year away. I think Brandon Davis Swain looks good. If you see him in the weight room now, he has really thickened up, and I don't know what he weighs at, but he looks like he belongs on that defensive line group at this point. And he's going to bring a different athleticism. But the best one of the group, and I think the best defensive tackle possibly in the conference, is Amari McNeil. And the things he was doing at the end of last year were just fantastic. He was basically unblockable, making third down stops in the backfield, making a couple of fourth down stops in the backfield. So he should be ready to come into his own this year and really show something. We've talked a lot about Jaheim Otis, and we've seen what he can do when he's healthy at Alabama against top. There's one clip of him playing against I think it was Texas A&M, and he's just throwing those SEC linemen around like they're blocking dummies. It's crazy to watch it. So if we get that from him, it's going to be a fun year, And then Anquan Barnes, I thought, was the most improved guy on the team on the defensive line in the spring. So I think, the size that Barnes and Otis bring is crazy. They're 6'5", 235, just massive dudes. And that height and arm length and whatever is going to make it tough for quarterbacks to throw the ball. So I think we got a clear top 3 to me, even though you don't have those 3 necessarily as your number 1 guys. But I think Torian Carter was, he started the year last year as a starter, so he's another guy. Will he or Thomas be the guy who starts at that other defensive tackle? I don't know. I think we're going to see the same thing as last year, where we see groups of 3 rotating in and out, and then situational guys as well. So who starts and who doesn't start, it may not be as important, quite frankly, given this group of guys, because all those guys I feel like you can put out there and they'll produce. Lightfoot comes from a slightly lower level from Fresno State. He's not as big as the rest, but he's got that 300 pounds on a much shorter stature. So again, kind of like Block Bully, I think. And so I think there's 7 guys that I'm pretty excited about. We can almost go 3 deep that way, and we'll see what Hudson and Davis Swain do as they get into the season to start to develop. But I'd be hard pressed to find a better defensive line than this in our conference this year.
When's the last time Colorado had 7 defensive linemen like this that made you feel this comfortable early summer?
That might be a never. Even back.
Back in the heydays, really?
Yeah, it was different. We're playing a 5-2, legit 5-2 with stand-up outside linebackers, and you had the 3 inside guys. There might have been a couple. I don't know if we ever went 7 deep like this. Maybe in I'm trying to think, like 1990. Joel Steed and it was 5'11", 275 at nose guard, and they couldn't block. Nobody could block it. But I can't remember all the names from 30 years ago. So there were some years. There were a couple years in there, that 90 team, that 94 team, that had guys maybe 6 deep. I don't know. I remember if they had 7 deep or not. That was. I'm not sure I've ever seen anything quite as deep as this.
We go from talking about
Gary Howe. Gary Howe was
Gary Howe. Okay.
Yeah.
Outside backer, the edge group. I feel pretty good about this group after doing this exercise. At one outside linebacker spot, I had Arden Walker, number 1, Keaton Wade, 2, London Merritt, 3, and Alexander McPherson, like Merritt, a true freshman, number 4. At the other outside linebacker spot, I went Samuel Okunlola, Quincy Wiggins, number 2, and Nikhil Webb-Walker, who is back. Great story. We talked about him a few weeks ago, coming back after doing chemotherapy treatment last fall. You got 7 guys here too. That's a pretty deep group.
Yeah, I'm not as sure about all these guys yet. I think London Merritt and Alexander McPherson got to prove something as true freshmen. Although London Merritt's standing out to me in the weight room with the way he lifts. He's a big, thick dude. He's got some strength and power. We know what Arden Walker can do. I think Arden Walker may be the best defensive player in the conference this year. And some people may laugh at that, but he was our second best defensive player last year, period. And did a lot more than I think people think he did. So he's strong against the run, and this is his final year, and he's got to make something happen. So Keaton Wade, it'll be interesting to see what he does with more playing time, because he made the most of what he got last year, and he doesn't have to sit out the first half of the season getting healthy this year. Okunlola, I think, is potentially. There's almost no limits on what he might do. So, seeing him healthy coming back would be fantastic. And then Wiggins and Walker are question marks, because I don't know to what extent Webb Walker is, does his medical situation allow him to be full go? How long will it take to get up to full speed, whatever? And in Quincy Wiggins, we keep hearing stuff, and what I'm hearing is pretty exciting. Those two, Wiggins and Webb Walker, are very different body types than the others, which gives you some flexibility and some different things to do as well. But it's hard to imagine a better pair anywhere in the conference than Walker and Okunlola as starters, and when a guy like Keaton Wade, with what he does in his limited snaps, is not a starter, that tells you something about your depth and talent. But the guy I'm going to keep an eye on and really interested in and see what he does, Quincy Wiggins, because if he becomes what Coach Prime is talking about this year, he's another one of those guys that may be, a game changer and borderline unblockable up front.
Yeah. I think Arden Walker definitely has a chance to go on and play in the NFL. But out of that group, I think London Merritt might be the biggest pro prospect, right? Even though he's a true freshman. Maybe,
I don't know. I mean, Okunlola and Wiggins, man, they're much taller and got more length than Merritt, I think. And so I couldn't actually say that I couldn't put Merritt ahead of those guys.
Okay.
And Art Walker has done so much actually on the field already. I think London Merritt's got to come in and prove it. He's got to show it out on the field. I mean, there's a lot of guys in there that might end up playing at the next level.
Moving on to a more questionable position here, and that's inside linebacker. At Mike linebacker, I went with Martavius French first, Sean Myers second, Mantrez Walker, the true freshman, third. At will linebacker, I went Reginald Hughes. the starting spot, number 2, Jeremiah Brown, and in the third spot, Kylan Salter, a sophomore who transferred in with his older brother, Caden Salter, the quarterback for the Buffaloes. This has a chance to be a decent group, but it makes me a little bit nervous about just kind of where this group is going into the preseason camp here in about a month and a half.
Well, there's a question mark on every single one of those guys, frankly, and they may answer it in a very good way and they may not. So, someone reminded me on our board that at this point last year we were in the same position. We didn't know. We had high hopes for Nakai Hill Green, but he didn't even start the first game. Even
Bentley had gotten benched at certain points during the 2023 season. So
Bentley had shown flashes the year before, but hadn't put it all together, and there was no way of knowing, in June of last year that those two guys were going to have the season they were going to have.
Yeah.
Will it happen again this year? I don't know. It could. No reason why it wouldn't. It's not like it's some crazy, far-fetched long shot. I think French and Hughes both did as much at their previous stops as Nakai Hill Green did at his. So I feel good about both of those guys. Quite frankly, I think the guy that might be the best of the bunch in some ways is Sean Myers, who's played a lot of football, and has done it pretty well. So not as big as the others, but sure can run and do some things. And then, Jeremiah Brown, I'm just still waiting because you watch him in spring games and he's just flying all over the place and doing great things. I'm just waiting for Jeremiah Brown to put it on the field the way I've seen it, in some practices and such. I think he's got everything he needs. I don't know, I don't know what's been holding him back to this point, but that's the question mark, right? And then Kylan Salter, my God, you see him in the weight room, and he looks like he's a 3-year NFL veteran, for Christ's sake, just with the body type. So,
and like I mentioned, he's a sophomore, so that's a good thing,
right? And you don't know, if it all comes together for him, it came from TCU, so he was highly recruited, and has been playing at this level for a few years now, and so. With a linebacker, they really got to be able to see and understand the defense and know what's coming and read fast and make responses. And, is Salter ready to do that? I don't know. He looks like it, but will he be able to do it full speed in the game? We'll wait and see. So Montrez Walker, I think, has got loads of potential. It is a true freshman ready to step in at inside linebacker and get that done. We'll see on that. But the one thing that's going to be good for these guys, they're not going to have offensive linemen in their face because the offensive line can get their ass kicked by the defensive line. So that ought to make life, if you can't play linebacker behind this group of defensive linemen, you can't play the game.
Yeah. I'm curious to get your thoughts on the next group here, cornerback. I went DJ McKinney and RJ Johnson as my starters, Tayon Parks, Ivan Yates as my backups, and Makari Vickers, who is coming back from heart surgery, and walk-on Braden Keith third at those cornerback spots. Now, you got to kind of tie in nickelback here because Preston Hodge is probably going to be listed technically as a cornerback, but we know he's going to play in that nickelback role and would expect him to be the starter there. Tyrekus Davis, transfer from Wyoming on the shorter end. I didn't quite know where to peg him in, whether that's a cornerback where he did pretty well at Wyoming, or if he could be a guy that could play a little bit, down in the box a little bit more. And then I had Noah King, who just spent one semester at Kansas State before transferring to CU as my third nickelback. I really don't know outside of Preston Hodge at this point who's going to play nickelback for the Buffaloes this year. And I think Carter Stottmeyer could do a great job in that, but they really need him on the back end now.
Well, I think you look at that list of cornerbacks right off the bat, and you got three I feel really good about: McKinney and Parks and Johnson. And
he missed Colton Hood. Colton Hood would make this group look a lot better, in my opinion.
Yeah, Colton Hood would make this be one of the best groups in the conference, but he's gone, and so good for him. He wants to do it. I don't give a
Yeah.
We'll just leave that alone. He can go play with his brother, play Twinkle Dink with his brother, whatever the hell.
His brother's going to UMass, but I probably should have just kept my mouth shut. But yeah.
But I think on a Deion Sanders coach team, you're gonna find a way to get things done in the secondary. And I think that you got to take all those three guys at the nickelback that you have listed at the nickelback and figure that they're going to all be factoring at the cornerback position too. And they just got to figure that out and figure out, their rotations and nobody really knew that Colton Hood was going to come on the way he did last year. And so somebody I expect will step up and do that this year. Ivan Yates is kind of a guy that's been around a long time. Again, kind of like Jeremiah Brown, you're waiting for the switch to go on and just.
Yeah, he was struggling out there in the spring game, I thought.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think people look at this spot and they think it's a little bit concerning, and Vickers, again, I don't know, just like with Webb Walker, it's like, how much does that medical condition impact his ability to be ready to play this year? I don't know. But I think that Preston Hodge is a guy that can come in and play any one of those positions. And, Tyrekus Davis, I think, is another guy with a lot of experience playing the game. Noah King has a lot of talent to play the game. And the other guy I think you got to remember when you're talking about the secondary here is Isaiah Harge could come and play over here too if you needed him.
Yeah. And
it wouldn't be, okay, I hate to say it, but it wouldn't be like throwing Espinoza out there. This guy's a legit Power 5 cornerback, who's chosen to play wide receiver right now. So it wouldn't surprise me to see somebody play a little both ways.
I think Harge actually might be their second best option at nickelback, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And could step in a corner. So I keep him in my mind as I'm looking at that position group as well.
Yeah. Good stuff there. At safety, I went Tawfiq Bayard, the transfer from UCF or USF, as one of my starters, and Carter Stoutmeyer at the other starting safety spot. Backups Ben Finiseth, who was placed on scholarship this spring, and John Slaughter from at the other safety spot. He comes in as a transfer for the Buffaloes. Third at strong safety, I have Terrence Love, and third at free safety, TJ Branch. And Branch, I think, is going to be a real player. He's got to develop a little bit, but this group actually, it's not crazy deep, but you feel pretty good about all six of those guys.
Yeah, and I think I'm just looking at John Slaughter. Where did we bring him in from?
John Slaughter from Tennessee. He played a little bit at Tennessee.
Yeah.
And
Auburn. So you got a couple guys that got some time under their belt in the SEC, and so. I think Tawfiq Bayard and Carter Stoutmeyer are going to be a hell of a pair, assuming they stay healthy. And then, I think Finiseth is a guy everybody's going to say, nope. Most people will never get past the walk-on title, but the kid can play and he goes full speed all the time, and he understands the defense and he knows what he's doing. And there's value to that, beyond just pure athletic ability. I think he's a guy that brings a lot to the field. So, all six of those guys, I think, bring something that's positive, and I think it should be a fairly strong group at both spots.
I also did my specialist predictions here, and I went with Alejandro Mata as the short yardage and PAT kicker. Buck Buchanan is the top long distance field goal kicker. Buck Buchanan also is the kickoff specialist. Punter Damon Greaves, we talked about how fast he is. And long snapper Cameron Hawkins. I listed some other guys there as potential backups, but that's pretty much. There's really no controversy within that. Even Deion Sanders said after the spring game that this is kind of what it is.
Yeah, and I think we'll be solid at all those spots, and even long snapper is like. If you ever hear about your long snapper, it's because something went wrong. We haven't heard about him for a couple of years, so.
It is interesting though. They've carried like 4 long snappers, pretty much all like just walk-ons. The whole time Coach Prime's been here, he really likes having a lot of guys in that room to utilize during practice, and they get that front row seat in the team meeting room, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, and they do a lot of different. You got so a lot of times practice is not always just offense versus the defense. A lot of things going on that might have, and you got kickers kicking off wherever they kick, and so having a long snapper there just help that in practice makes a big difference. Again, if you run out of them, it's gonna hurt you. Otherwise, you never hear of them, right?
Yeah. No, I've done that story many times talking to long snappers about, hey, nobody noticed you this year. Does that mean that it was a successful year? And they all pretty much
Yeah,
say,
right.
yep, that's the gig. That's what we got to do. Every once in a while, you can get down there on punt coverage and maybe make a play. I'm trying to, maybe 10 years ago, there was a CU long snapper that forced a fumble on punt coverage. Do you remember that?
Yeah, vaguely.
Blanking
Yeah.
on the name now, but that's about the only time you want to get noticed as a long snapper.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure I could throw out a name of a long snapper in the last 40 years of Colorado football.
Cameron Warchuk, he was pretty good. He went on to Washington.
Camden Dempsey because of his other role, But other than that, they're the most least known players on the team.
Yeah, although I mean they get more airtime than a lot of guys on the team now.
Yeah. You snap a ball over a punter's head, man, and that changes the game.
Yeah,
So their importance is critical. Or you muff that snap on that extra point that's going to win the game.
Yeah.
It's funny. It's funny how critical their role. Kickers' roles can be critical too, but everybody's critical of kickers, right? But long snappers, they got to do it perfect every single damn time, and nobody ever talks about the long snapper, which is probably a good thing.
Well, we just did for about 5 minutes, so kudos to us, right? They did add Luke Whitting to the mix at long snapper to go with Camden Dempsey and Gabe Landers, who's been in Colorado's program for a couple years now. Landers transferred in from Miami. I think isn't Gabe Landers? I think he's the player that Coach Prime calls Eddie Haskell because he looks like a guy from Leave It to Beaver.
Yeah. Well, you got to be old enough to know that one.
All right. The Buffaloes had 4 official visitors on campus this past weekend. They've got some recruits coming in through town early this week, again next weekend before the recruiting dead period sets in. Make sure you go to BuffStampede.com to get all the latest recruiting news because we've been keeping you up to date with everything going on with the recruiting stuff. And there's going to be kind of a break coming up there. So there's going to be kind of this last push. And then a lot of decisions get made in early July once the dead period starts because these recruits get back home. They kind of process this. They talk to everybody in their life. And then, they generally will have an announcement, through Instagram's kind of the main way guys go nowadays. Some will be on 24/7 sports. And so recruiting news never really stops. And we've got you covered there. Anything stand out for you? I mean,
I think the two guys that got coming in tomorrow are both exciting to me. It's and all people may not know too much about him. Joe Pecco is a big 6'3", 310-pound interior defensive lineman. Obviously, his father's our coach at defensive line. And I would say to people that's not always an automatic. Kids don't always want to play for their dad. So people think, well, that's as automatic as it comes, but it isn't necessarily so. And then Trips
as well as brother, because his brother, older brother, is committed. So yeah, you never know all the dynamics of every family.
Yeah, I mean, I got one brother. I wouldn't want to be in the same room with the son of a bitch, So, and then Trip Skews is a big 6'7", 300-pound offensive tackle from Kent, Denver that I like a lot. He's an 86 3-star, but I think he's still a guy, that it could really give you a lot at that tackle spot, and he's a guy, even with that rating, he's, got Kansas State, North Carolina, Texas Tech's after him, and Vanderbilt. So he's a guy that's got every kind of measurable you're looking for at offensive tackle, but he's sort of, it's funny to me. I guess because he doesn't play at the right school on the front range, he doesn't get the same sort of notoriety as some of the other guys.
Yeah. And there will be, I can tease this, another in-state recruit, it sounds like, who's going to be on campus early this coming week as well. So definitely stay tuned to BuffStampede.com to get more information as we continue to track that. Did we talk about Coach Prime's non-disclosed health issues on last week's show?
I don't think so.
Okay. I've had to do a lot of interviews, and I'm like, look, like, we're going to know the specifics of this when Deion Sanders wants us to know the specifics of it. And I think you've just got to respect people's privacy in a situation like that. He's, by all accounts, in me talking with sources, been very involved with the program the last month and a half. And I said this with 24/7 Sports, our CBS team, that like it's never ideal to have a head coach not on campus for a month. But if there's a time of year where you can kind of get away with it, especially knowing that you can zoom in with these recruits on campus, again, not ideal. You'd rather be there in person to go up against the famous wall and take a photo and get people excited. But, it kind of caught ESPN's attention, I think, through USA Today's story. And all of a sudden I'm doing like 3-4 interviews a day talking about it. And it's like, I don't know. It's been kind of frustrating, I guess, covering that.
I think the national media can't get enough of Deion Sanders, and this is another juicy tidbit that they can go after, and nobody really knows because he's not telling anybody. And it's like I said, to some extent, it's nobody's business, but to some extent, when you're this high profile, it is people's business, right? People look into everything you do and see. It seems clear to me. It's kind of like the contract talks, several months ago, and everybody's like, "Oh my God, is this going to happen?" You got to read between the lines sometimes, man. And everything was very clear to me that was all going to work out. And the same thing here, that everything seems very clear to me is all going to work out. Now, Coach Prime got health problems, man. They're not. I'm not a doctor. I don't know how serious they are, but they are legit. You don't get parts cut off your body unless there's something going on, right? So. And then anybody can get sick any given time. I'm 60. I think he's 58. Things happen. So that's just part of getting older, I think. But it seems to me that he's in pretty good shape and not going to be going anywhere. And none of us can guarantee tomorrow. But seems like sort of a non-story to me. I guess slow time of the year, they got to talk about something.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the drama has been a little less this offseason than it was last year. There's still, they find ways, but did I just jinx it?
Probably just kicked it off right there. Here we go.
Oh, here we go. Okay.
I don't know. I think, at some point you can't keep that fever pitch of drama forever. At some point, like Deion Sanders being a coach of Colorado was new for a while. Now it's not.
Yeah.
Now the question is, can he keep us at that level, which seems like a no-brainer to me. But as long as we keep winning and doing well, he'll kind of settle into normality. You know what I mean? It's like at some point that's like, well, that's just how it is, and that's how Coach Prime does it at Colorado, and it's working. And let's move on, find something else.
Yeah, but definitely, positive vibes out there for Coach Prime and his family, and hopefully he can get back when he is ready to. And I will say the whole staff at Colorado at CU deserves kudos because they've had to operate with Coach Prime taking other sabbaticals to the Country Prime Ranch and to speaking engagements, and so they've known how to operate when the head man's not in the building, and it's not like it turns into a club. They get their job done, and so that's one thing that it's Deion Sanders, it's Coach Prime, and that's the focal point of media attention, even on our podcast. But there's so many hardworking people on that staff that, really, aside from maybe a recruit wanting to get that photo opportunity with Coach Prime, I think they're all getting the same treatment they would if Coach Prime was in the building.
Well, I think the people outside, like national media, even some local media, they get lost in the persona of Coach Prime or Prime Time, whatever, and they miss the point that he's a very serious professional dude, man. And he ain't hiring chumps. He's hiring people that fit his hard work and his professionalism and his level of commitment to what he's doing, right? So. Like all the idiots out there that don't know what the hell they're doing in the media, they see all the flash of the Sanders family flash and damn fools talking about Shaduro's brash because he held his watch up. End of the world. My God, dude held a watch up. But what they miss is that that
what the Arizona State student section was telling Shador is one thing.
Well, what they miss is that this family is very serious about what they do. I mean, they're not just playing the game, messing around. They do everything at a championship level and do everything at the best that they can. And Bucky's doing a video and he does it in a professional way, right? This is a family that's not a bunch of goofballs and clowns. These are serious people who do a serious job of what they're doing, and Coach Prime hires serious people on his staff, and those are the kind of people that you trust them to do their damn job. You don't got to be there looking up over like I say, Patrick Swayze. That was Coach Swayze or any of the recruiting staff or anybody else. Everybody knows their job and they're professionals. They're going to do it, or they wouldn't be there in the first place.
They're serious people. We're sometimes serious. And I hope that folks enjoyed today's podcast. Hey, you got anything else on your mind?
We're seriously something. I don't know. People can put in the comments. Fill in your favorite adjective. We are seriously.
That's a good exercise.
Probably.
I'm glad I got to work in the Ryan Staub mention there too. I got to remember the username of somebody that just that really gets under their skin. Yeah. So.
We'll have to develop all new, with some of the whipping boys, like the two centers gone. People had to come up with all new people they don't like.
I can think of a couple candidates already, but let's not go there today. Let's avoid the drama, and we're going to get into our top buffs countdown, similar to kind of what we did the last couple of weeks, but on a different level of just. It doesn't matter what position you can rank these guys anywhere, and it's a fun exercise to get into. And usually it leads us to different points of storytelling with different positions and different players. And so it's always a good exercise during this time of year. And like I said, Big 12 Media Days around the corner. Then you got camp, a lot of recruiting going on. So it really is 24/7. I think I got the shirt on right there. Yeah, there we are. Yeah, 247.
Yeah, I got my Bronx team. Got my.
Okay. All right. All right, William. I appreciate you. Always good chatting with you, and hopefully we can do this again next week.
Yeah, for sure. I'll be there.
All right, and I appreciate, as always, everybody out there for tuning in.